true leader is someone who can get a greater team to buy into the work and the process that they don't necessarily want to do, right? I think a true leader is someone who can explain the why to their team and get buy-in to do hard things. Obviously, we remove barriers, we create clarity, all those things are part of our job. But I think a true leader is someone who can get a team to rally around the process and driving results the right way, right? Anyone can have a one-hit wonder. Anyone can, run a sprint. It's the teams that run the marathons consistently that I want to be a part of, that I want to be the leader of. And that starts with just falling in love with the process and getting your team to fall in love with the process, because the process is what's going to drive the results. And once they see that, they fall in love with the process. They get the why then.
Welcome to the True Leadership Podcast, where we sit down with executive leaders to explore what leadership really means through the lens of their stories, their wins, their struggles, their vision, and their lessons along the way. I'm Ty Hammond, founder of One Mountain Leadership and creator of the True Leadership Approach, an awareness-based path that helps leaders shift their focus from what to do about their problems to how to grow from them. Whether you're just stepping into leadership or are well-seasoned and at the top of your game, your potential won't be realized following someone else's script, but you can draw insights from their stories and turn it into wisdom by putting it into practice in your own life. Welcome to the True Leadership Podcast, where we explore the essence of leadership beyond tactics and performance by sitting down with executives to hear what matters most to them. I'm your host, Ty Hammond. Today's guest is Andrea Deaver. Andrea is a sales executive and people-first leader with over 20 years in media and advertising. As Chief Revenue Officer at Hearst Austin Media and a Hearst Lab Scout, she drives revenue growth, builds high-performing teams, and helps women-led startups access new opportunities. Recognized nationally for both results and culture, including Editor and Publisher's 25 Under 35 and Gannett's Culture Creator finalist, Andrea is known for blending strategy with authentic connection, ensuring clients, teams, and communities thrive together. It's a pleasure for me to have Andrea on the podcast today. Welcome to the show, Andrea.
Appreciate you having me.
Absolutely. So my opening question here, every leader has a beginning. I've, of course, found that who we are as leaders at work and in life starts well before we make it to any position of executive leadership, often before we even make it into a workplace at all. I'm curious, who's someone from your early life or an early experience that you feel like helped shape the kind of leader that you are today?
I love this question. I think back to my childhood, honestly, and my father. My father was a leader in a couple of big organizations as I was growing up, and I had the benefit of watching him lead small, medium, and large teams, and then eventually create his own company and build that from scratch. And I just remember, especially when he was in the early days of starting his own company, the long hours and the conversations and phone calls that I would hear at that point, and just what he poured into the people around him to make that a success. And that always was instilled in me, like just that it's not the glamour that I think a lot of people think of when they think of leadership positions. Like I think sometimes young professionals especially think that, oh, if I just can become a leader, I can take a step back and it'll be really easy. And it's actually the exact opposite. I think my dad's work ethic and his commitment to the team and the goals of the team is what kind of helped me grow into my desire to want to do the same with my own team. And so I credit him with how I lead as we move forward.
Fantastic. I'm curious, anything in particular, as you look at your day-to-day, right, throughout the actual grind and the performance of, the showing up of leadership, that you feel like most feels like that inspiration from your father is in that?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, my father there's no harder worker on the planet than my dad. He raised three children. I'm a twin. And so he had three kids in college at the same time, three kids driving at the same time, three kids doing competitive sports at the same time. None of those things are cheap. And my dad worked really hard to give us all the opportunities that we had and to allow us to enjoy our childhood and our growth without the burden of, you know, having to pay for college or come out with a bunch of loans. And I always think back to just his dedication and the hard work that he put in and day out to give us the opportunities that honestly we've grown into now. It set the foundation for how my sister, my brother, and myself operate in our day to day lives and the lives we're trying to give our children.
I love that image of growing into and through a gift that leadership and guidance gave you. I feel like that's a really beautiful image for leadership in general and the impact of that.
Absolutely.
I'm curious, of course, in this podcast, it's the True Leadership Podcast. We're exploring the essence of leadership. Of course, true leadership has different meanings to different people. What does true leadership mean, and what makes a true leader to you?
I think from my perspective, a true leader is someone who can get a greater team to buy into the work and the process that they don't necessarily want to do, right? I think a true leader is someone who can explain the why to their team and get buy-in to do hard things. Obviously we remove barriers, we create clarity, all those things are part of our job. But I think a true leader is someone who can get a team to rally around the process and driving results the right way, right? Anyone can have a one hit wonder. Anyone can, run a sprint. It's the teams that run the marathons consistently that I want to be a part of, that I want to be the leader of. And that starts with, just falling in love with the process and getting your team to fall in love with the process, because the process is what's going to drive the results. And once they see that, they fall in love with the process. They get the why then.
I really love that. And, of course, hearing so much that influence, the buy-in, I'm curious, what are the ways, or what has helped you become a leader that gets people to fall in love with the process? What has helped with that?
Yeah, I think this is a two-part question for me. And I say that because I think it's a blessing and a curse. Here's what I mean by that. I came up in this business on the support side and then was an account executive myself. I've done all the sales roles in this organization. So I know what it takes. I know the roadblocks. I know the challenges. I know the processes. I know how difficult my sales team's job is day in and day out. So I have that, um, understanding, if you will. And I think that helps to create buy-in.
So you mentioned, of course, that influence and the buy-in that gets people in love with the process. What in your mind has helped with that for you?
For me, it's been the familiarity with the job I'm asking them to do. I've done the jobs that everyone on my team is being asked to do in this company. So I understand the roadblocks. I understand the process challenges. I understand, the external factors that are hard and we have little to no control over. So I get it truly because I've done it. I think that helps to create some buy-in and influence their decision to continue to push forward, right? Because they see someone in front of them asking to do work that has done it and has broken through all those barriers and been successful at it. And it's not been easy, but it's possible. And I think when people see someone that's done the work and it's possible, they feel more capable of doing it themselves.
I love that. It makes me think of the word of like modeling, showing, not just telling, and how important it is. What I hear in that is what it's like to actually embody a thing from a place of leadership that isn't hierarchical in a way. Sure, you may be in this place of a position of power, but it's a leveling the playing field by having experience and being able to empathize what the experience is like for others. Does that resonate?
Yes, and I think that is so important. It's so critical for leaders to continue to do that work to an extent, right? Like we can't do it for them, but things change. So when I was a sales rep 10 years ago, there's new challenges, there's new roadblocks, of course, today than there were 10 years ago. And there's new conversations happening. So it is so important that we put ourselves in their shoes consistently still, right? One of the things that I ask my leadership team to do and that I do on a weekly basis with my team is cold call. Like, let's get in there with our team and do the work so we can have the empathy. We can really understand what our reps are hearing, what they're having to overcome, because that also creates better conversations in our one-on-ones. It creates, you know, better problem solving, better solutions. If we're hearing it ourselves, one, the empathy is increased because, oh, okay, yeah, that's actually happening. I got the same response. And I think it also creates just more trust with the team. You know, we're all in it together. We're all driving towards the same result. Like we need to be in the trenches doing the work with them. Let's get after it.
Absolutely. I love that. Sounds like you're actually doing the thing I feel like is it's so many leadership books that leaders end up not doing so often, which is actually, getting down, getting on the floor, walking around, having those conversations and not just playing that game of telephone, right? But actually, as you say, doing that work and that practice of getting in other people's shoes. So,
Yeah.
and you've already spoken so much to what the impact of that is, how that builds trust and increases your ability to influence and get buy-in.
Yeah. And I believe in the process. So if I believe in something and I'm not willing to do it myself, it's hard to get buy-in, right? Real buy-in. But the
Yeah,
process works.
fantastic. So I'm curious. Well, obviously, every leader faces moments. Every human faces moments in life that test and shape them. Can you share about an experience that really challenged you and became a turning point in your own leadership journey?
Yeah, absolutely. And there's been several throughout my career as a leader. I think that anyone who's trying and working on things is going to fail. That's just part of trying. The more at bats you have, the more strikes and strikeouts you're going to have, and that's just part of it. Um, I think early on in my career, going from an individual contributor to a sales leader for the first time was a really pivotal moment for me in how I decided that I was going to lead. And it shifted, right? I think when I first stepped into my leadership role as a sales manager, I thought, I'm going to do this so much better than this person that I just took over for. Like, it's not even going to be funny. She was doing everything wrong, and I am so smart. I have all the answers. Like, I'm going to do it my way. I'm going to do it exactly like I did it as an individual contributor. And this is going to be easy. Wow. That was super naive and super not right. And also didn't drive a great culture for the team that I was hired to lead. In fact, it did the exact opposite. Instead of creating a team and allies and empowering the people that I was leading to do their job the way that they had done it before and done it well, I tried to change everything and mold them into me. And that could not have been any more inaccurate in terms of a process. And so I was lucky at that time I had a leader who recognized that I was on the wrong path and held me accountable and had conversations around where he needed to see me shift and why. And I also was open to that feedback and really wanted to do a good job. And so I did. I shifted and I did something that was uncomfortable for me in the way that I had always been, and it ended up making me so much better. But it just changed my path. completely.
Yeah, I'm so curious. What I love that story. I feel like that I pray for any I see moving into a manager role that they hear what you just said, potentially to help them avoid some of those pitfalls. Though it sounds like, and I would imagine that so many of those pitfalls were so necessary for that learning journey. But I'm curious because that's a major shift, right? That shift from IC to manager role is a leap, right?
Yeah.
What what did you have to outgrow or let go of in order to really step into that ability to manage people for the first time?
Yeah. And transparently, I'm still working on it. I've gotten a lot better over a decade, of course, but it's still something I actively have to work on. And that is letting go. Let go of control. Let your team do what you hired them to do because you hired them for a reason. You saw that they were capable. So stop trying to get in there and own everything. Stop trying to get in there and direct every which way we go and how it gets done and, you know, all of the things. That's not my job to own anymore. My job is to develop these great people around me that we've hired and to be the best they can be. And their job is to take care of X, Y, and Z with their customers. And so, really taking that step back in terms of owning the outcomes and the process from A to Z was really challenging for me because I was still acting like an individual contributor. Um, and that was not doing what I needed to do. It's still something I have to work on. Like I'll find myself jumping in to solve something that I shouldn't solve, right? Not because I can't, I absolutely can, but there's no growth and development for my team in that. And sometimes the best growth and development comes from failing.
Agreed. Well, so much of what I hear, of course, we've all heard the quip, "What got you here won't get you there." I put a little spin on it, which is what got you here will keep you from getting there. So, that thing that made you a superstar as an individual contributor will totally hold you back as a manager.
It's interesting
That-
you say that because when I first applied for that role as a leader, companies put you through all these personality exams and, all these tools that they use to decide if you're going to be a good hire for that role or not. And when mine came back, I scored really well on it, but it said risk was that I would have a hard time not being an individual contributor and to watch out for that. And so my boss at the time who promoted me had a very direct conversation with me about that and said, we've talked about this with your development and we know this is a potential risk, but I think you can work through it. I think you can outgrow that and mold into a great leader. But we have to be cognizant that this is definitely a little bit of a red flag. And so, yeah, and it was, and it immediately was a blind spot. That wasn't so much a blind spot because we saw it, but it was something we had to address quickly.
Fantastic. Well, you've already said a little bit about, what's helped you grow, having a leader that held you accountable. But thinking about your journey over the past few years, as you've been growing in the past, it sounds as a leader over the past 10 years intentionally, what's been the most valuable investment that you've made in yourself? Coaching program, community, another commitment, and what difference has it made in your leadership and your personal growth?
Yeah, so I love to read leadership books. I love to listen to podcasts. I love to hear different perspectives on leadership and, dealing with the different challenges that we all face in whatever role you're in, just so I have different points of view, right? Um, and so, really, reading has been most of my investment has been in reading and really just consuming as much as I can in the space. And then also making sure that I keep in touch with and make it a point to communicate with regularly mentors who've helped shape me, who I respect. I've been very fortunate to have two really amazing leaders who I no longer work for, but that I keep in touch with and talk to on a regular basis. And anytime that I need a gut check, or I need a different perspective, or I need someone to tell me you're wrong, but here's how you can fix it, or here's some things that I would think about, I go to them, because I know they'll tell me the truth. I know they're not afraid to hurt my feelings. They'll give me the feedback that I want, and I trust their advice.
Well, I always love to give the opportunity for you to actually mention the names of these people. Should you want to, just to give them
Yeah,
a little love and a little shout out?
yeah, absolutely. Kevin Martinelli. He was my last sales leader. We've been through some transition in companies over the past year, but he was my sales leader at my last company, and just one of the best leaders I've ever had the privilege of working in. He is a straight shooter. He also, leads with empathy, but he leads from a point of winning, which resonates with me. Like, he'll have tough conversations, and he's just a really strategic operator. And some of the things that I fall short in, he excels at. And so I learned a lot from him in the areas that I'm challenged in. And he's just a really good human. So Kevin Martinelli, amazing. And prior to him was Scott Pompey, who hired me for my first leadership position. We're very different leaders in every single way. But I think one of the things that I learned from Scott early on is just data points are so important. Like, don't go all in on one data point. Make sure you have a lot of data before you come to a conclusion. I struggle sometimes with making gut decisions, and that's not always great. And he really taught me that make sure you have enough data from different sources before you come to a conclusion. So,
Fantastic. Well, Kevin and Scott, props and hats off. Thanks for the influence that you've had here on Andrea, and I'm sure on other people that you've led as well. Just love to give that little shout out and appreciation
yeah,
to leaders
for
here.
sure.
Um, Leadership is, of course, what we're shaping for tomorrow as well. What's your vision for your own leadership, your legacy, the impact that you want to have in the years ahead?
Yeah. So I'm actually really excited about what's to come. I just mentioned we've been through a transition of ownership companies over the past year. And with that, um, I finally feel like I have the team and support around me to grow myself as a leader. I have a support mechanism around me and other great leaders who are taking on a lot of the day to day work that I was doing before so that I can cast a vision and work on the bigger picture. I think I've been really tied down to the day to day over the past year and the transition, and I'm excited about um, the opportunity to really drive forward new. Um, we talked a lot yesterday. We had a leadership offsite yesterday. Actually, we talked about setting the standards for 2026. Right. I think we talk a lot as a sales organization about goals, which are important. Obviously, that's our main job is to hit the goal. That's very measurable. It's future focused. Like, it's a metric. Great, we've got to do that. What I really want to focus on is what are our standards, right? What are the things that define who we are, how we operate every day? What's our baseline for the level of excellence that we refuse to drop below? Because when we understand that, when we're all bought into our standards, regardless of the circumstances around us, external, internal challenges, whatever it might be, like, we're going to hit our goals because we're consistent with our standards.
I I hear standards in that context a bit as like the way we do things, which strikes me as similar to values. Is that are standards equal to values? Are they distinct in your mind?
Standards are one and the same with values. Absolutely. It's our integrity. It's how we come to work every day. It's how we interact internally and externally with customers. It's how we prepare. it's, do we make excuses or do we make progress? You can't do both. And so it's all of those things. And it's what drives the goal.
Boy, I love that, and we could come back full circle, couldn't we, to actually showing and not telling, and getting down on the floor in the shoes, on the sales floor with folks, and living it through. I imagine, and through my own experience, I know that that's the way that standards are really
Absolutely.
set and embodied in an organization, is by the leadership. So I'm so happy to hear that you're doing that
Yeah,
work. I love that.
absolutely.
So, considering the conversation we've had around true leadership today, what it means to you, your vision for the future, what's your growing edge right now? In what ways are you being stretched, tested in your leadership or in life today?
So being stretched from a leadership perspective, I think one of the best things that's happened with the transition of the people around me this year from a company standpoint has been just the caliber of people that are working with me locally. My team has expanded tenfold um, in terms of just peers from a leadership perspective that I get to work with day in and day out, and that I get to learn from. I'll mention Kate Weber, who's my peer in San Antonio, is, at Carte Blanche, like we seem like very different leaders. Like we do have very different styles. We have the same role. We're both tasked with driving revenue in our respective markets. And we do that in very different ways stylistically. And I am learning so much from her. She is great balance for me. And again, the areas that I'm not super strong in or that I don't yet enjoy doing. Um, and she's just showing me a different way. I have not had the benefit of having a leader from a female perspective in a long time who I've been able to really look up to and say, wow, like I am learning a lot from you. I respect you a ton. You're making me better and I feel supported by you. And that is like such a blessing to me. Um,
But so it's wonderful because part of what the question is and part of what I'm hearing from that, and I'll just call this out and then I'll bring back around
yeah,
the initial question. I really hear from you. Yes, of course, here is my job as a leader and the way that I show up to help, bring in the folks that I'm leading. But I also hear this really genuine admiration, respect, and gratitude for having someone your senior that you're learning from as well. And so this question is really about the ways in which you're being stretched or challenged right now, maybe similar or different in its own way
yeah,
of how you moved from IC to
yeah,
manager. Like, what's the next shift now?
yeah. Yes. Okay. One of the ways I'm being stretched right now is with first buying the Statesman came a lot of additional support. I am very used to putting everything on my own shoulders and doing everything myself from a leadership standpoint. I did not have a ton of local support previously, very different companies with different organizational setups. And so it has been challenging for me to lean on the team around me and not take it all myself. And that's different from, the individual contributor to leader piece because it's not about doing individual contributor work. It's about truly trusting the leadership team that's been built around you to help with the leadership stuff. And that is also difficult for me. Like, not because they're not capable, they're amazing. And they're probably more capable in some of the areas of doing than I am. But it's new. Um, and it's change. And it's also letting go, if I'm being honest. And I am a bit of a control freak. This just in. So releasing that control, releasing it to someone else, possibly seeing that they're doing it better than I would have. That could be a blow to the ego, right? Like, ouch. But it's also been really great because I'm learning so much from that group of people around me. I feel so blessed to have the team around me, and our leader, Mark Medici, who's done a really fantastic job of just assembling like the squad. This is the squad, and everybody, works well together. We have tough conversations, and we're driving results. I think it's really special and unique.
Fantastic. What a blessing, as a leadership coach and someone who's worked with executive teams across the board. I could tell you I have worked with teams everywhere from it being like one of the most amazing experiences in their life to one of the challenging and most hard. So, really giving kudos to you and the leadership team over there at Hearst for, creating that culture and those dynamics within the team. That's really, and kudos to you, Andrea. I want to say that work of letting go it requires courage. Boy, is that courageous work. That really goes right to the heart of what the true leadership approach is all about. So you're totally speaking my language there. So finally, this last question is a little bit more of an invitation. You have the time and the space here to offer to our listeners whatever it is that is most in your mind and your heart to share right now. Anything at all?
Yeah.
The floor is
I'm a
yours.
huge believer in feedback. Feedback is honestly the best gift that we can give ourselves, that we can give our team, our peers. I mean, in our personal relationships, feedback drives growth, which ultimately drives the goal. And if there is anything that I want my team to get from me, that I would consider like, okay, that's success in my mind, is this natural desire for them to continually ask for feedback, to hear it, take it in, think about it, reflect, and then take action on it. And that's difficult, right? Like it's easy when you're hearing you're doing everything great. And when you're at the top of the mountain and you're on the top of all the leaderboards and you're driving the growth and you're hitting all the metrics, like feedback is easy, right? Because yeah, you're great, you're wonderful. What else are you going to hear? But are you asking for feedback when you're in the valleys? Are you asking for feedback when you're in the slump? And then what are you doing with that feedback? Because if you're just hearing it and then you're not taking action, then it's useless. I think the real growth is in taking that feedback, taking action, and then following up with more feedback. Okay, how am I improving? Where am I still falling short? Like feedback is not a start and stop. It is a circle. And so growth for me, growth for my team, where I think I would feel so great about where my team is and honestly where my peers are, is when I start seeing that consistently from them. That I'm not starting the feedback cycle, it's them consistently asking for it. Because everybody gets better in that world.
I love that. Every living organism requires feedback loops, not only to survive, but to thrive and grow. So thank you so much,
Yeah.
Andrea, for sharing your story here today, for sharing your insights. What you said is going to be really valuable for whoever listens here. I really appreciate your time. Thank you so much for being on the True Leadership Podcast.
It's my pleasure. Thank you.
That's it for this episode of the True Leadership Podcast. If you enjoyed this conversation, you can subscribe to YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you're listening to this to catch future episodes. This conversation was brought to you by One Mountain Leadership, where we help leaders grow the capacity, confidence, and presence of true leadership through the True Leadership Approach. To learn more about the approach, our offerings, our community, and how we can help you realize your potential in both leadership and in life, visit us at onemountainleadership.com.